الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنة إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on His last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. The topic of today's khutbah was basically 6 lessons from Ramadan, or 6 main lessons that we may learn from the fast of Ramadan. The Imam began by pointing out to us that whoever lets Ramadan go by without benefiting at all from it has in fact lost a major opportunity which cannot be returned. It is something he's had. It's a major loss. We miss a day of fasting, we try to fast back that day. We miss a salah, we try to make up that salah. But the period of Ramadan, with all that it signifies, if we are unable to take lessons from this period and to benefit from it, then we have lost much of what Ramadan is about. And he emphasized that Ramadan is like a school, a period of training that we go through for 30 days, in which we are being reminded, we're being trained, and there are particular lessons which are to be gained from Ramadan. The first of the lessons is that of attaining a consciousness of Allah, which is known in Arabic as taqwa. And this is stated in the verse regarding the fast. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, in order that you may develop taqwa. And by taqwa is meant a consciousness of Allah, a sense of the presence of Allah, that Allah is watching us. That which, this consciousness which would make us better individuals. This consciousness, or this state of mind called taqwa, was described by Ali ibn Abi Talib as fear of Allah, or fear of the Most Glorious, and contentment with little, and preparation for travel, that is, travel to the next life. Fear being an essential component of taqwa. Though there are some people who would promote that worship of Allah should be without fear. You have some people, particularly those who belong to mystical groups known as tariqas, they promote this idea that their worship of Allah is based only on the love of Allah. Fear is for the ignorant masses. You do good because you love Allah, not because you fear Allah. It may sound theoretically reasonable that you should do good not because you fear, but because of your love of Allah. This seems to be, according to them, this is how they promote it, as being a higher level of faith. But in fact it is not. Fear is something which you find mentioned throughout the Qur'an. fear of Allah. Fear of Allah in the sense that one fears the punishment that would come from disobedience of Allah. One loves Allah by striving to obey His commandments, but at the same time one has to have a fear of the punishment of Allah. These two are inseparable, and they constitute the basic components of true faith. And Abu Huraira had reported that whoever fasted, or whoever was able to catch during the fast Laylatul Qadr, that he would attain salvation from his previous sins. And also whoever fasted the month of Ramadan, ihtisaban, that is seeking the pleasure of Allah, and imanan, with correct faith, he would also attain salvation from his previous sins. However, this is only for those who fast in accordance to the way that the fast has been prescribed. Not merely following the letter of the fast, as we spoke about in previous sessions, but finding the spirit of the fast and fasting in accordance with it. We know that because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was also reported to say that whoever doesn't give up false statements, lies, rumors, and acting in accordance with these statements, Allah has no need for that person's fast. He also said that perhaps one who fasts will only get out of the fast thirst and hunger. And he also pointed out that we should not make our days of fasting like our days of non-fasting. There should be a difference. So it is essential for us to approach the fast with the correct spiritual methodology in order that we may develop through the process of fasting a greater consciousness of Allah. The second lesson is the strengthening of one's bond with Allah through worship. The various acts of worship are means of establishing a bond or a contact, a link with Allah. This month, all of the various acts of worship are increased in their quantity and in their sincerity, in the way in which we apply them, due to the particular recommendations of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in order that when we come out of this month, we will be at a higher level than we were before we went into the month. And the human being is composed of a body, a mind, and a soul. The food of the body is that of what we call food and drink, whereas the food of the mind is knowledge, and the food of the soul is faith and consciousness of God. In this month, one seeks to develop a feeling of worship, a feeling for worship, due to the fact that we are striving to remember Allah. All of the different acts that we do should help to develop more of a consciousness of worship being the structure of our whole lives. You know, as Allah has a say in the Qur'an, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi Rabbil Alameen. That my prayers and the sacrifices which I make, my living and my dying, are for Allah, the Lord of all the world. This is the true Muslim, one whose complete life, all of his waking hours and his sleeping hours, become a form of worship of Allah. Because of that, we find that we are encouraged to read the Qur'an more in this month. And in reading the Qur'an more, we are increasing our consciousness or our contact with the word of Allah, for the purpose of that word changing us. Because we're not just reading the Qur'an with the ritual idea of merely completing the Qur'an in Ramadan. This is not the intention here. The intention is to read the Qur'an with the desire to gain from what Allah has to say in the Qur'an. The additional Quranic reading in this month was for the purpose of putting us more in contact with the words of Allah. The words of Allah which, if they find a place in our heart, will affect the way that we live, the way that we exist. So we strive to increase our contact with the words of Allah during this month. In reading more Qur'an, it also means that we try to read less or to hear less of the Qur'an of Satan, Qur'an of Shaitan. The Qur'an of Satan is, as we pointed out in earlier sessions, music, stories, films, etc., which are not carrying us closer to Allah. Things which in fact give us certain pleasure, entertainment, but when we really look at the content, they're taking us farther away from Allah. So we try to do both. One, to bring ourselves more in contact with the Qur'an of Allah, the words of Allah, and at the same time in this month we should try to avoid as much as possible what we attribute or we associate with being the Qur'an of Shaitan. Involved in this month, we're involved in night prayers, additional night prayers, that outside of this month, likely we are not. We may be praying on occasion at night, but in this month we have continual night prayers. This is to, again, encourage us and to strengthen us more, that once we get out of this month, we will continue to pray more often at night. Because we should have no doubt that the prayers which will be the most sincere are those prayers at night, when we get up from our sleep, when everybody else is asleep, nobody is watching us, nobody knows about it. When we get up and pray to Allah at that time, those prayers have a level of sincerity that is very difficult to achieve during our daily prayers. This is why the night prayer, which we know as tahajjud, is recommended for us. So in this month we get special training, special additional practice in developing the desire to stay up at night and to turn to Allah in prayer. We also in this month increase our sittings with the righteous. In this month, because we're breaking fast, people are invited to our homes or we're invited to their homes. These especially should be those people who are the more righteous. We should try to invite people to our homes who we know are particularly righteous, people who are actively involved in da'wah, etc., to increase our contact with those who are involved in righteousness, to hear about righteousness more. We should go, they have circles where lessons are being given in this month. We should try to attend more in this month to get additional exposure. All of this, as we said, to increase and to strengthen our contact with Allah. The third lesson of Ramadan is that of patience and strengthening our will. No doubt, for a person to fast correctly, it does require patience. It does require willpower. We have to strive and to struggle with ourselves to establish the fast correctly. Of course, to do the ritual of the fast, it doesn't require that much patience and willpower. As we said, for a person to eat a 3-course meal for suhoor and a 3-course meal for iftar, to stay up all night, in the middle of the night they're eating also, then of course fasting during the day, there's no willpower, there's no test of patience, there's no feelings of hunger, no nothing. The person sleeps all day, wakes up just before breaking of the fast, he breaks the fast, has his meals, and this is why a number of people, in some lectures that I've given concerning Islam and the misunderstandings concerning Islam, I've had a number of people say to me, what is this fast that you all practice? All you do is just move the day along 12 hours. You sleep during the day and you awake all night. What's the big deal? What is that going to do for anybody? What good is this fast? This is what they have observed of many of the masses of the people here. That in fact what they do is change the day into the night and the night into the day. And of course, that type of fast, though it complies with the ritual of not eating between dawn and sunset, there is no fast happening here. It's not really a fast at all. And naturally, that type of a fast will not develop in the individual patience, sabr. Patience, which is critical for success in this life. When Allah in the surah known as Al-Asr described mankind, all of mankind being in a state of loss. Wal-Asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. All of mankind being in a state of loss. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who believe وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ and do righteous deeds. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Sorry. That except for those who encourage each other to stick to the truth, to be righteous, and those who encourage each other to be patient. Patience being a key. And there are many other verses, wherein Allah commands us to be patient, and that He would reward those who are truly patient with paradise. This is the ultimate reward for patience in this life. So it is very important for us to ensure that we enter into the fast correctly, so that we can learn the lessons of patience and the lessons of strengthening our willpower, our ability to take a hold of our desires, put them in check, and not submit to them. The fourth lesson is the escape from what we call showing off, or riya. In Arabic it is al-ibti'ad an riya. That is, it's like escaping from showing off, doing acts that we may be seen by others. This principle of doing acts to be seen by others is a very, very dangerous principle. It is the principle which destroys all of the good that we do. If we are not careful, we might be doing a lot of things which are classically, referred to as being righteous deeds. But if we have this quality of doing things to be seen by others, then these deeds that we do lose their value totally. This is why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said that the thing which I fear most for you is this riya. And he described it as being like a black ant crawling on a black stone in the middle of a moonless night. It means this is something that you can hardly perceive. which comes upon you. Something which we all have to be conscious of. Every last one of us who seeks righteousness, we have to be conscious that we do not destroy our deeds by not doing it purely for the sake of Allah, but doing it for the admiration of others. And the fast, the true fast, is training in this kind of action. Doing righteous deeds purely for the sake of Allah. Because the true fast cannot be done to show off to others. Because the fasting is something which is internal. It is something which is not seen externally. In the full sense, it's something not seen externally. Like prayer is something, it's an external action. Giving of zakat, these are all externals. Whereas fasting is something which is, in the full sense, internal. And this is why Allah, in a hadith known as Hadith Qudsi, wherein Allah has said something directly to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and He's related it to us, which is not in the Qur'an. He said, "As-siyamu li wa ana ajzi bih." That fasting is only for me, and I am the one who will reward it. So, this means that the true fast, the realities of the fast are internal. It means that what we spoke about earlier of giving up evil speech, evil thoughts, etc. during Ramadan are critical. This is the aspect which no person will know about externally. That we have controlled ourselves for the sake of Allah. We have to concentrate on this to take benefits from this aspect of the lessons of Ramadan. The fifth lesson is that of moral training, moral character training. That in this month we try to do more good and we try to avoid more evil. We try to give up using bad words, cursing, etc. We're also told by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that if somebody wants to fight with us, get into an argument, etc., and they start to curse us, etc., our response to them is to say, "Inni sa'imun." I'm fasting. That is our word. That's our response to them. Don't get into it with them. We just say, "I'm fasting." Avoid. This is what we should be applying throughout this month. And if in fact we come out of this month and there has been no change in our moral character, in the way that we communicate with others, the way that we treat others, if there has not been any improvement in the course of this month, then we have not really fasted. So I said this month is a concentrated series of lessons. Not that we only do them during this month and then outside of this month we don't do them. No. But that we make a concerted effort, an additional effort in this month, so that when we come out of this month, we have improved our status, our overall Islamic status. There is an improvement between after and before. There is a difference before and after, before the month and after the month. The sixth lesson, and perhaps according to the Imam, it is, in his view, the greatest lesson of Ramadan. And that is that the believers feel or realize that change is possible. You see, in this life, when we look around and we see the status of Muslims today, corruption throughout the land, people are involved in all kinds of innovations, and we have become so far away from Islam, it's very easy for us to say there is no hope. Very easy. There seems to be no hope for Muslims. their situation is just getting worse and worse and worse. And we know that the only way that it is possible for that situation to change is if the Muslims change. And when we look around, we say, how can they change? People who have been living all their lives involved in these aspects of shirk and bid'ah, innovation, and corruption, etc. How can these people change? There is no way for these people to change. What Ramadan tells us, if we look into Ramadan carefully, is that it is possible for this change to take place. How? When we look at the masjid in Fajr, the masjid which during the rest of the year is empty, we see full. People are filling up the masjid. Now, we know that for some people it's just a ritual. We talked about that already. Ramadan Muslims, right? But the point is that for many other people, it's not people who are just, they really have no belief and it's just a ritual they're going through. No, there are people who believe, but due to the weakness of their belief, they end up making their prayer at home or whatever. They've not given up prayer. But in Ramadan, they will come to the masjid, which is what they know they should be doing anyway. So we see a change taking place. The masjids become full in Ramadan, when outside of Ramadan they're not. If we look at the Qur'an, the Qur'ans which are throughout the year dusty, dust builds up, piles up on them all through the year. In Ramadan, the dust is blown off, people are reading the Qur'an. We have examples here behind us, people reading the Qur'an. After every prayer we see people picking up the Qur'an and reading the Qur'an. Large numbers of people. Again, as we said, some people it's just a ritual. But there are, for many people who know I should be reading the Qur'an. But due to this reason and that factor and the other, they get distracted and are too busy to read the Qur'an as they should. So in this month, they're trying to make up and to read more Qur'an. And of course, if they're reading Qur'an with a consciousness, thinking about what Allah is saying to them, it inshallah will improve them and help them to change. We also see amongst people a change in their behavior. People who outside of Ramadan will get into arguments quickly with you, etc. You find during Ramadan, they tend to hold back. So you find change taking place in character and practice. We also find, for example, that in Ramadan, people are able to give up certain corrupt habits, etc., that outside of Ramadan they can't. And the example that the Imam gave was that of smoking. You have chain smokers who, you talk to them outside of Ramadan, brother, this is haram. You are killing yourself. Suicide is haram in Islam. So and so. But, I know, brother, but, it's just, I can't give it up, man. When I give it up, I get headaches, my body goes through, what they call withdrawal, and, I just can't function. I have to have the cigarette. But in Ramadan, he quits. He might, as soon as he breaks the fast, he might be smoking, but during the day, for that, 10 hours or whatever, he's not smoking. If you ask him to give up for 10 hours during the rest of the year, he'll be shaking. He can't do it. But in Ramadan, somehow, he is able to do the impossible. What during the rest of the year appears impossible, he's doing. These are all among the signs that let us know that it is possible for change to take place. Muslims are able to change themselves. We can change the present condition of Muslims. However, it's going to involve jihad. Jihad on ourselves, our own desires, jihad, waging a holy war, if there's such a thing as a holy war, waging war against ourselves, against the evil which is within ourselves and outside of ourselves, in our families, in our communities, in the society, in the nation. We have to wage war against it. But with patience, if we are firmly behind our efforts, then change becomes possible. And it is only those who disbelieve really in Allah who give up any hope for change, who give up any hope that Allah will come to our aid. If we make an effort, change can take place and we can receive the blessing and support of Allah. which would give us success in establishing or re-establishing Islam within our lives, our families, and the countries and around the world as a whole. So, as a summary, we said that Ramadan has lessons. Among them, taqwa, consciousness of Allah. The strengthening of our bonds with Allah through worship. Developing patience and strengthening our will. Fleeing from doing acts of worship for the admiration of others. Developing and improving our character, our moral character. And perhaps the greatest of lessons, realizing that change is possible. This is not to say these 6 which the Imam mentioned are the only possible lessons which may be gained from Ramadan. But these are major lessons which we all should reflect on and strive over the course of the next 2/3 of the month to try to get something of these lessons, so we may come out of Ramadan having benefited from the fast and having come closer to Allah in our actions as well as in our faith. If there are any points which I missed, anybody would like to add? As the Imam usually, when he's speaking, he's saying many things. We try to pick up as many as we can. There's usually 1 or 2 points that slip by. If anybody else caught something. Are there any comments or questions people would like to raise concerning Ramadan?
I'd just like to point out that I've noticed from reading some of the hadith that one of the things that's most encouraged in Islam is that if you do something good, you should try to do it continuously, or you do it regularly. And something small which is done regularly is much better than doing a big gesture from time to time. And particularly with people who are just going to the mosque in Ramadan, should think about that.
This additional recommendation from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to try to be constant in our actions is something that we all should reflect on. However, one should not think from that statement of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that it's better for us to do a little regular than a lot intermittently. And since that's the case, there's no point increasing our actions in Ramadan, because a person could also take this other interpretation from the statement. So it's better you just keep doing a little and do it regular outside of Ramadan, inside of Ramadan, than to try to do a lot in Ramadan and then you come out of Ramadan you can't keep it up. No. Though the recommendation in general is that it is better to do a little regularly than a lot intermittently, Ramadan still is a period of time in which we are encouraged to do as much as we can, to increase all of what we're doing. And this increase is not, it does not become meaningless or loses its value if when we come out of Ramadan we're not able to maintain the same status or the same level. It doesn't mean that. Because what has happened is that Allah has set certain periods, we could call them seasons, in which good deeds are increased in their value. Certain places in which good deeds are increased in their value. So for one to try to take benefit of this is why has Allah said this? He said this, one, for His grace to be available to those who seek it, and as a means of encouraging us to increase our actions, even if it is for a period of time, because when we do it even for that period of time, when we come out of it, if we do it sincerely, it will raise our general level of practice. So Though we should keep in mind that we should try to maintain whatever good we do, we should try to maintain that level. Not to do a lot of good today and nothing tomorrow, but try to increase our practice gradually. This is really what, is being recommended here. That when we are doing good deeds, we're trying to establish our practices. We try to build gradually, step by step. There's no point in trying to pray at night, every night, and we don't pray our 5 times daily prayer. We're missing Fajr all the time. We're missing Fajr, getting up, we can't make it to the masjid. Certain basic, fundamental things we have not established, but we're getting up for that night prayer every night. No. This is the idea. That it's better we start with the basics. Establish the 5 daily prayers, because that's what's required of us. Number 1, first question that we're asked about on the Day of Judgment is the compulsory prayers. So that's the one we have to deal with first. Establish that in its correct time in the masjid. After we've established that and that becomes a regular practice, then we add to it. Here's our increase. We're building gradually. So whatever we add, it remains there. This is the idea behind the hadith.
Bilal, I think some people maybe calculate that in Ramadan all the good deeds have a value of 10 to deeds outside of Ramadan. If you fast the whole month, then your sins can be forgiven. So from the good... I was just making the point that some people maybe calculate that the good deeds are a value of 10 times in Ramadan, and that there's a hadith that if they fast the whole month of Ramadan, their sins are forgiven. So maybe they're mistakenly thinking, hey, if I'm a good Muslim 1 month a year, then I'm okay till next year. And that's the point I was trying to make.
Well, of course, that concept, where a person is not practicing Islam throughout the year and then practices Islam in Ramadan, believing that will make up for the 11 months where he is a disbeliever. Of course, we have discussed this at length, that this it has nothing to do with Islam. But it is true that fasting in this month, with the correct spirit, it does remove our sins. It has that quality Allah has promised. But we said this is only for those who fast with the correct spirit of fasting. One who is a disbeliever 11 months out of the year cannot become a believer for 1 month out of the year. He can go through the ritual of the believers for that 1 month, but he cannot become a believer for that 1 month. So, of course, those people who we call the Ramadan Muslims are really Ramadan non-Muslims. Right. Brother?
Earlier, in the earlier part of the football translation, you said that we should make special efforts to spend time with people who were or are involved in dawah and other activities. In other words, people who are constantly showing their love for Allah and their love for the Muslims and their love for Islam. But does that mean that we can invite non-Muslims to our house for for dinner, maybe in the way of dawah or something of that nature? And also, when we use the word kafir, is that a curse word? Are we using that like, are we cursing? Is that like a curse word, or is that a descriptive word? Could you clarify that and just answer the other question?
To invite non-Muslims to partake of our food during Ramadan for the purpose of dawah, of enlightening them to Islam, of course this is something commendable, whether in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan. But what we mentioned was a general principle, that actually Prophet ﷺ had said that only the pious should eat our food, and we should only eat the food of the pious. This is sort of a general principle which the Prophet ﷺ has given us, as a general principle. But it doesn't mean that for the purpose of da'wah, we may not go and eat the food of a person who is impious, or that we may have an impious person come and eat our food. Where the goal is da'wah, and not merely friendship. You see, this is the point where the Muslim has got to be clear in terms of who do we take as our close friends who come to our homes and share our food and our friendship, our love, etc. These should only be the pious. That we do not have a body of friends who are buddies and old-time friends or whatever, who are not pious people, whether they call themselves Muslims or they don't call themselves Muslims. And our relationship with them is just one of, talking about the old days and, what a good time and what we'd like to do and material things, what I want to buy, I want this house, I want this. It's just the dunya. That type of friendship, that type of relationship is disliked in Islam. It's despised. It's because it destroys faith. Allah, makes statements to this regard in a number of verses in the Qur'an, that you will not find the believers taking the disbelievers, as their close friends and confidants. And the term kafir can be used in a good sense, or it could be used in a negative sense. It could be used as a curse word, or it could be used as a descriptive word. It's just like the word mutawwa, right? Mutawwa, it means a volunteer, a person who voluntarily commands the good for the pleasure of Allah. But you know how people use the term mutawwa, It's used like a curse word sometimes. So similarly, the term kafir, which is a description of a state, of a people who hide their faith, who are disbelievers, this could be used as a curse word. I believe it's in South Africa, they refer to the pagans as kafirs. Right? They've taken this with, this is the Christians, or dark-skinned people, they call this term kafir, right? It's used as a curse word, like. And we may find some Muslims in dealing with non-Muslims, when they should be trying to reach them, getting the message of Islam to them, they are cursing them in this fashion. Oh, it's a kafir, I would want to have anything to do, this kafir. This, of course, this type of approach is wrong. When we look at the disbelievers, we should look at them as a doctor looks at the sick. His patient, the patient, those who are sick. He looks at them with some compassion, that they are in a state of ill health and I need to find some remedy to help them. This is how the believer looks at the disbeliever. They're sick. They need help. Of course, you have some, who are not satisfied with being only in a state of disbelief, but who are going to try to harm the believers, take up arms against the believers. I'm not saying, you may still look at this person as being sick and in need of help, but you have to fight him. Right? Your approach to him will be different from one who is sick and just doesn't know he's sick or whatever. You try to help him, you reach out to him, right? Trying to be kind, etc. Whereas the one who is sick and knows he's sick and is coming to try to destroy you because you stand for health, good health, spiritual health, then the only way that you can deal with such a person is by force. Questions from the sisters. Is tasting food we cook, does it break our fast? Well, technically speaking, if a person does not swallow what they have tasted, it does not break the fast. But it's something very, very dangerous. It's like playing with fire, as they say, right? So my advice would be that you don't taste the food, during the fast. You prepare whatever foods, your seasoning, whatever, before the suhoor when you can taste it, or even for the breaking of the fast, so you've already determined what the taste is like, and then you just have to go through the actual mixing and the cooking. Better to do it that way than to put yourself in that situation, because though, as I said, technically speaking, if you taste it, put it on your tongue, which gives you an idea of what it tastes like, and then you spit it back out again, that you have not broken your fast. But you are, putting yourself in a position which where it may be possible for some of it to slip down your throat, and you know you feel it going down your throat. And if you do that, then you've broken your fast. So, as general advice, I would say, one should avoid tasting foods during Ramadan. Smelling the foods, some people mistakenly think that if you smell the food also, that this may break your fast. No, this doesn't at all. Can you start eating and drinking, or can we still eat and drink if the adhan has already started? That is, for suhoor. If you're eating or drinking, the adhan goes. Do you have to stop immediately whatever you're doing? No. In fact, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said that if the adhan goes and you have a bowl of food or a glass of drink in your hand, finish it before putting down the vessel. That is, you will finish eating what is in your hand. Not that the adhan goes and there was some food there that you plan to eat, so you go now pick it up and start eating. No. You're limited to what is in your hand. And of course, one has to take this in the correct spirit too, because it also means that, if you've had ample time to eat, etc., then the adhan is coming in another minute, so now you pick up a whole bunch of things and fill your arm with food and drink, so you can continue eating for another 15-20 minutes after the adhan. Again, though we may be complying with the letter of what the Prophet ﷺ said, we're not in fact complying with the spirit.
Does the adhan regulate our beginning fast, or is it when the thread is night, the thread is dead, which is period beyond the adhan?
No. The adhan is at the time of the thread, the white thread of the day appearing. This is when the adhan that we are hearing goes. There used to be 2 adhans in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. There was a pre-adhan which was made. 3?
No. They do it somewhere.
Oh, okay. In some places in Riyadh you'll hear the 2, right? But in the Prophet ﷺ's time it was common. They had 2 adhans. One was a pre-adhan which was made by Bilal, and this was to let the people know that the adhan for Fajr was coming. And then Ibn Maktoum, the blind companion of the Prophet ﷺ, would give the adhan of Fajr. So the one we're hearing now is that adhan of Fajr, which is when the white thread appears. The white thread of the morning appears distinct from the night.
What about our own saliva?
Our own saliva. Our own saliva is okay. This is part of your system. Saliva is going down your throat all the time. You're not breaking fast by doing that, Conceivably, we could create a circumstance, right, where if we go around smelling enough foods and thinking about food enough, then we can get a mouthful of saliva, right? And, then you could end up in a state where it's like you're actually drinking, But under normal circumstances, if one gets saliva in one's mouth, I know some people are mistaken in this, and you'll find people spitting all the time. This is saliva which you may swallow is not considered breaking the fast. When you wash your mouth after wudu, and you spit out what is in your mouth, that process of washing your mouth will cause the saliva to flow afterwards. It is not required of you, after you've spat out what you have gargled with, now for you to continue to spit until the saliva stops being produced. No. Once you've spat out what was in your mouth, then whatever else comes in your system is a part of your system. Maybe you might have a runny nose, right? And it's draining into your system the whole time through the fast. It does not break your fast. Okay? Question?
It's not about Ramadan, but in Indonesia, it's not uncommon for the people to use the blood, for Muslims to use the blood of the animals to make food with. Now the question is, if what they do is they'll slaughter the animal and then catch the blood in a cup and save it for later, is the meat of that animal then haram to eat? Or just that whole body?
Question for those who couldn't hear it is that our brother mentioned in Indonesia there's a common practice of the people when they slaughter an animal, collecting the blood and using it later for cooking purposes, I guess making gravy or whatever, We know that saving the blood is haram. For a Muslim to save that blood, to collect that blood, to cook with that blood, etc., is haram. It makes that food that they're eating haram. Now, is the animal which is slaughtered according to the Islamic principles, but the blood is collected, does that animal become haram? No. The animal does not become haram.
So then if you go to the butcher and you insist that he slaughters in front of you, and he slaughters and saves the blood and then gives you the meat, it's okay to take it?
Yes. If the butcher slaughters, collects the blood for himself, but gives you the meat, that meat is halal meat. What he is doing with the blood is what is haram. Any other questions? Or comments? If a person in a dream he's sleeping, obviously he's sleeping during the day, and he has what we call a wet dream, does that dream now break his state of fasting? It doesn't, because this is something which has happened outside of his control. He still has to make a ghusl upon waking, he or she. They have to make a ghusl, complete bath, upon awakening. However, any act which takes place, which will normally break the fast, but outside of a person's consciousness, like if you forget that you were actually fasting, and you took a glass of water and you drank it. After you finish drinking, you're conscious of, oh, I was fasting. That drinking, or if you ate something, does not break your fast, because it was done in a state of forgetfulness. Erection. This doesn't break fast. Okay. Any other?
Using toothpaste during fasting.
Using toothpaste. No, using toothpaste does not break the fast either. You know, toothpaste is similar to cleaning one's teeth with miswak. As we pointed out before, that it was the practice of Prophet Muhammad to use miswak while fasting. Miswak has juices and a taste to it. However, when one does so, one should not turn the miswak, as we said, into a lollipop, where they've got the miswak in their mouth all during the day, chewing on it and, just swallowing the juices, because then it does become a form of eating. One does, drinking here now. One is, in fact, breaking one's fast. Similarly with the toothpaste, you brush your teeth, wash your mouth out, spit it out, fine. But if you are, brushing your teeth all the time, sucking on your toothbrush, or, savoring the taste of your toothpaste, then you could be entering into a state of breaking your fast. Pardon? Incense. No, incense doesn't break the fast. Burning incense does not break the fast.
Below there's ayat in Al-Baqarah talking about being in retreat in the mosque, and that there's certain days for that and certain conditions in regard to our wives and so on. Can you give us some more details on that?
The question was concerning i'tikaf, the retreat to the masjid, which was a part of the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, particularly in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and particularly in the last part of his life, he actually increased that time to 20 days. So actually the month of Ramadan, the principle of retreating to the masjid is one which is encouraged for those that are able. And during the period of the retreat, of course, one stays away from one's family in the sense of sexual relations, etc. So it means that even in the night, though it is halal for one to have relations with one's wife during the night, because one is in a state of retreat, one will not be involved in that. This is a means of increasing one's act of worship. One spends a period of time in the masjid, and there are some statements of Prophet ﷺ to indicate that this i'tikaf really is only valid in Mecca and Medina. Yeah, there are certain actual statements of Prophet ﷺ which indicate that. Though it is commonly understood by most of the various schools of Islamic law that one may do so in any masjid.
Can one make i'tikaf for 1, 2, 3 days?
Oh, okay. The question is, can the i'tikaf be for less than 10 or more than 20? Of course, this is a voluntary act. One may, do what one is able to do. It could be the last 5 days, if that's all that one is able to do, the last 1 day. It doesn't have to be 10 or nothing.
Yeah, they spend the whole day in the month.
Oh, do we have to spend the whole day? Yes, normally you spend the whole day and night, with the exception of going out to use the bathroom, or if there is some need that your family has, which only you can provide for them. You may go out, get that need, purchase something, give it to the family, and go back to the masjid. But you're not outside of it, for anything beyond dire need or an immediate need. Yeah, huh?
Eating or using the bathroom?
Not eating.
Well, I mean, after we break our fast, after Islam, then if you're in the house, it's nothing. Generally.
Oh, people may step out to eat and come back. Yes. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yes. Yes.
But
because you're not allowed to bring in they're not allowing you to bring in meals into the masjid, right? So you have to step out to eat. So you step out to eat something and come back in again. Yeah.
But there are some brothers who will come and they will stay from far away, and they will even make tahajjud, and then they'll leave and they'll go to a hotel room, and they'll stay there until Fajr or whatever the case may be. Then come back to the house. Right? Is that i'tikaf?
No, this is not really i'tikaf, because the staying in the hotel is not. This is just a question of convenience. It's more comfortable to lie in your bed in the hotel than to sleep in the haram. So for those people who may spend the whole day, pray tahajjud, the tarawih, and then leave the masjid and spend the rest of the night in their hotel, and then come back in the masjid again in the morning, this is not i'tikaf. No. They'll get the reward for what they're doing in terms of the prayer, in the masjid, etc. But they would not get the additional blessings of making i'tikaf or the seclusion in the masjid.
One point about the i'tikaf, also, one is allowed to leave the masjid for necessity, for example, taking a meal, or for a person who changes clothes, whatever. It is not preferable for you to loiter or to hang around. If you're going to take your meal, and then you take your meal, and then you take a cup of tea, and you sit, and you go get a paper, and you do something else. So you go to perform the need, whatever it is, and you go back to the masjid, because the i'tikaf is in the masjid.
Okay.
Is it haram or permissible to shorten the beard?
Trim. Okay, question concerning the trimming of the beard. The vast majority of scholars hold that it is allowable for a Muslim to trim his beard. I'm holding that it is required of a Muslim to grow a beard. Some hold that it is strongly required in the sense of it being a strongly recommended sunnah, and others hold that in fact it is compulsory, and that to shave one's beard is sinful. Having fulfilled the requirement of growing the beard, of course those who say that it is sunnah and not that it is compulsory, then trimming becomes, doesn't really make any difference, because according to them, you could also shave it. It's better to grow it, but you could shave it. But those who hold that it is compulsory,